Join the team. Yes!
It is awesome. I don't know. Bear, what do you think? Nothing? He's speechless. Hey, this is the McGuire Review, and today we're going to be taking a look at an awesome game from Awaken Realms. Another one. We just got done with the huge, epic Kickstarter for Lords of Hellas. If you didn't get on that, you might want to check that out. But today we're going to look at this war of mine. Again, Awaken Realms. I'll hit you with a couple stats here. 45 to 120 minutes. So it does offer that kind of small play, but if you really want to get into a lot of gameplay, you can do that with this title as well. And you can do a lot more than 120 minutes. It's 1 to 6 players, so this is a full solo experience, but it is a great game to play with a group of people. And 18 plus. Now, the reason why this one has an 18 plus rating is because there are some things in this game that are very, very real life. Although it does give you the option in some of these cards to remove some of the cards that are more, I would say, kind of death-like type cards. What I'll do now is just get right into the overview of this game. And let's run through some components here. We're going to do a high-level round what each one of these phases in this game look like. And then we'll talk a little bit about how those things really integrate together as an overall experience that you get in this game. I'll just run through a couple things. This was a Kickstarter edition that I have here. You'll notice that there are quite a few little miniatures out here that represent our characters in the game. Then there's this big one here, kind of an angel statue. It's pretty awesome. I haven't run into what that is just yet. But there are a ton of characters, so there is some stuff here that's going to be different than what you would get maybe in a retail release of this game, as this is the Kickstarter edition. So there is something here called the Last Day and the Endless Night, various different scenarios that you can play through. There is also a bag here that was included with most of the stretch goals. Now there are some cards as well. There's quite a few other cards that were included that go into these decks that you see here on top of the table. But there's quite a few different things in here. In this bag, there's some extra tokens. There's a couple little special envelopes that you open at certain points in time in the campaign. There's one that you open if you are able to beat the whole game in the campaign. There's an entire book here that talks about the heart of the city, including the sewers and the Orphans of War books. So that's extra campaign material that you can do, and there's miniatures that are assigned to those as well. And then one thing that I thought they threw in that was really good that you don't generally see is this little book here that says about stretch goals. So I thought that was pretty awesome that they put this book in here that actually tells you what all this extra stuff that you get in the game does. That is a great component, and other manufacturers should pay attention to this here, because a lot of times you get these games and you get the Kickstarter components and then it's like, you know, if you didn't follow the Kickstarter, or maybe you got a Kickstarter edition of the game down the road but weren't part of the Kickstarter, you get all this extra stuff and it's like, you don't know what to do with it. Like, what's this extra thing do? And maybe if you can go back and read the campaign and find that in the campaign notes, oh, that's what this means. This eliminates all of that. It's this nice book that kind of lays out all the components that come with the game from a Kickstarter perspective, how to use them and how they integrate into the game. So, well done, Awaken Realms, on including that. I thought that was a fantastic addition to this game. Now what we're going to want to do is kind of run through what I have set up here, because I have already started to play this game, obviously, and I'm kind of ready for a new day. So I thought it would be good to kind of show you what it looks like once you get into it, and then we can kind of explain how this board will build out over time. And that's one aspect I absolutely love of this game, is that it starts in one state, but over the course of campaign play, you will build up your environment much like you would in real life. So that's an awesome mechanic, and we'll get into that here in a minute. So you will find with the game that there are 2 books included. One is called The Journal, and one is called The Book of Scripts. And The Book of Scripts is a fairly hefty little book, and it's, you know, it's got you can see it's got small print, tons of scripts. I don't want to give away, so I'm not going to show you too close because you don't want to read all those before you actually get to the right scripts. But you can see that there is a ton of content in this little book here. And the scripts do go all the way up to 1,947. And then there's a few words from the authors. So there is quite a bit of content in this book. And, you know, when you first pull this out of the box, and this is where I'll say for new players, don't get overwhelmed when you see this book of scripts and think, oh, God, is that the rule book? No. There is information on how to play. There are rules that are embedded into this book in between the scripts that you will need to reference as you play the game. But it's like in little bite-sized chunks. So it isn't like you are, you know, given this enormous rule book to read through, because this game does have quite a few rules in it and quite a few different things that happen depending on the scenario that you're in. And it would just be too much to have to remember all of that on the fly or read through a huge rule book before you started to play. It just wouldn't be an enjoyable experience, I think, that way. And the way they've designed this game is the opposite of that. You don't have to really read through all these rules to start playing. You kind of learn on the fly. I love that aspect of this game as well, is that you can dive into this incredibly deep, rich experience, almost like being in the middle of a movie that you're playing out, and you're getting to know these characters and feel these characters' pains and changes throughout the course of this campaign. You can just dive right in and get started with what we call the journal. So the journal is a very small book, and it's nice color pages there you can see, and it just steps you through. And what we're looking at here is basically the beginning to all this. So they're going to show you how do you set up the board and the game to start. And a lot of these tokens here, I have them set out so you can see them, but these tokens are going to be put in the box in a specific way. There's little compartments in the box that hold these tokens for you, and you will be, you know, putting those tokens in the box throughout the course of the game, pulling tokens out of that box throughout the course of the game. So the box is used as a component of play here. So it's going to show you how to set it up, and then what it's going to do is it's going to go through each one of what I like to call game phases within a full 24-hour day. So what you're going to start with is morning, and it's going to say, well, in the morning time, just do this stuff, right? And then when it's the day actions, here are the types of actions you can take. You can do those things. Then it goes into dusk. What happens during dusk? Then the evening. What happens during the evening? Then as part of the nighttime, there's a scavenging phase, which is really fun. Scavenging is, you know, I haven't decided yet. Scavenging may be one of my favorite phases of the game, only because of all the stuff that you run into, but I love the day actions as well. So it's a toss-up. You guys can put in the comments, if you've played this game, which phase you like the best, but I love the scavenging, and I really like the day phase as well. And then there is a night raid phase, and then there is the dawn, and what happens during dawn the next morning. So that's what you're going to go through, and you're just literally going to go through this journal page by page, and it's going to tell you exactly what to do. And you can even see scavenging here is probably one of the heavier ones, and you can see that's all you got, right? You read that, you're able to do everything that you need to do, and the cards in the game that you're interacting with will help you learn rules and understand what to do next and what to do in certain situations. All right, so that's how the journal book works, and that book will be passed around from player to player. If you're not soloing this experience, obviously that would just be you would hold the book and just go to the next page. But if you were playing with other friends, you would pass that book, and it will tell you exactly, it says next player right there, exactly when you need to pass this book to the next player. And the purpose of that is then that player can sort of say, okay, group, now we're in the scavenging phase. All right, first thing we're going to do, choose a location. So it just keeps everyone on point as you go around and play the game. It also is, in certain situations, whoever has this book is the leader, and they can kind of make final calls to what the group is going to do. Because this is a cooperative game, and you're going to be talking about, like, what should we do? When should we do it? There's lots of different scenarios like that you're going to be discussing over the course of gameplay. All right. Now, within this book, it is going to have some things that are going to be called out, like, hey, reference the scripts book at, you know, script 200 or 901 or whatever, right? And then you'll go to this book, and there'll be one little section that might help with a rule. So there are some FAQs and some rule clarifications that, you know, if you're reading this and you run into something, you're like, I'm not really sure what to do. Movement was one of those things for me when I first started to play this game, because it's very abstract. within the day phase and how you move around this board. So, that was answered very quickly, right in the scripts book. And what I find is every time I've had a question and specifically what I was looking for in a situation, when I went to the scripts book, it was answered perfectly. So that tells me that there was a high level of playthrough and design, and it was really thought out what a player would experience as they went through this and what they might have questions on and run into. I've never had a situation where I went to where the rule clarification should be and I'm like, yep, still can't find it. The other thing that I would say as a new player when you get into this game is there's going to be a lot of things that you're going to find on cards and on tokens that may not be all of a sudden, right off the bat explained in these books here. Don't worry about that stuff. It isn't like you're breaking a rule or you're losing something. As you play the game, you'll flip cards and all of a sudden it'll say, oh, draw a color from the color deck. Oh, that's what those colors at the bottom of the cards meant with the little numbers in them. That's the color I need to choose, and that's the script I need to choose to then read. Because again, as you play this game, there is this RPG aspect of it that you're going and you're reading these scripts and you're following along with the storyline, and it is a very much a choose-your-own-adventure kind of style, which is something else that I'm highly attracted to. I really like that choose-your-own-adventure gameplay. I would say that to caution new players to this game, don't get overwhelmed with all the cards and all the colors and all the little numbers and symbols. It will all play out. It will all be okay as you go through this campaign. So what I have laid out here are my characters. You will start the game with 3 characters. I now have a 4th character because I picked somebody up along the way. So I do have now a 4th character that's in my party. And each one of these characters is going to have some special abilities. Some of them don't necessarily have a named special ability. Some of them do. They do have a level of prowess and a level of empathy. Those come into play when you're in guard mode and you're kind of defending the fort, we'll call it. Or those come into play if there is some type of death that's involved. That empathy number will come into play. And then there's something called statuses, and you'll find those right up here. And there's quite a few of them. You got hunger, fatigue. You've got misery, we got wounds, we've got illness. And as your players gain these statuses throughout the course of gameplay, they can get them and they can lose them as well. You're going to be taking these little tokens and just setting them next to your character. And they do kind of build up. So you can have hunger of 1, you flip it over, hunger of 2. There's hunger of 3 and 4. And there's various things that will happen when you max out these different statuses. And you can find those rules right in the rule book. Another nice thing that I found about this is they do have these little black sort of dots on them, almost like you took a Sharpie and you kind of filled in one of those circles. And what that does is as you're playing the game within the day phase, every character will have up to 3 actions they can take. And as these little dots are filled in, that basically means that you don't have all 3 actions. And how this works is, that's the first, the second, and then the 3rd action. So that's basically telling you that if this is face up like this on your character, you don't have your 3rd action. You have your 1st and your 2nd. And those don't stack, so you may ask, well, what if I have multiple statuses and maybe some of them are filled in 3, some of them filled in 2, some of them filled in 1. They don't stack. In that situation, you would look at what your highest one is, and that's what it would be. So if you had one, you had 3 or 4 statuses, like our example here with Bruno has hunger of 1, nothing's filled in, fatigue of 1, the first one fills in, and wounds of 2 and the kind of the last 2 are filled in. So that means that Bruno right now only has the ability to take 1 action during the day phase, and that's the first round of actions. Outside of that, he can't do anything else until I heal those wounds up on him and get rid of that. So that's how those statuses work. And then you're going to have and I'm not going to go through every single one of these here, but you're going to have a bunch of different items that you can acquire throughout the course of the game. Weapons, you're going to have meds and bandages and food, different types of food. I love the books that are included. Where's my favorite one here? Treasure Island. So the Treasure Island book is included here. I will go through these books. What else we got here? Old Darling. Old Darling, Let's Be Adventurers. And what's this 3rd book? What does that say? I don't know what it says. Something about lovers or lovings. That's the third book that we've got there. And then, the weapons, some of the stuff is going to come broken. Some of the stuff is going to come, usable. There's different, things throughout the game that can, turn a broken item into an item that you can, use again that isn't broken. I've actually got one of those right here. It's something that came from the narrative deck here. We'll get there in a second. That plays out as you go day to day. There's a phase where you'll get to choose a card from this narrative actions here. And then what we'll do here is look at some of the what I like to call like physical components. So we've got these little gear-like plastic components that are actually called components. And then we have these little plastic sticks here with little grooves in them, and this is wood. So over the course of game, you'll collect water. Right now, I did a real big scavenging run, so I was able to collect a ton of water the last time I went out. Water in this game is very important. It's as important as your food. Obviously, if you don't have water, you'll die. So within this game, you do want to make sure that you keep your eye on how much water you have. That can become a big problem, as well as stocking up on food. Every day you have to give drink and food to your party. You can't ever have any more than 4 at a time on the board. So those 4 people, if you do have 4, you got to have enough food and water throughout the course of the day to feed them, so they don't go hungry and they don't start to have various different statuses they can acquire if they don't have those things. I will note that right down here there is something called the save sheet, and this is another awesome component of this game. Is as you play, you may not want to sit down and play hours and hours of this game, although when you start, you're going to want to. You're going to get into this game and you're just going to get deep into what's going on, and it really, your heart has to be, I absolutely love this game. You get so involved in it, and it becomes so much fun that after you put it down, I find myself like, oh man, I wonder what happens in the next phase, or oh, what happened to... You want to get back in and play the game, and if you do need to stop and put it up, like obviously this can't be out here at all times like this, although I may move it to the active live table at all times. I may move it over there, which I probably will here soon. Because I do want this one live at all times. I want to play through. They give you this save sheet, and on the save sheet, you are able to mark kind of how everything is on the board and what resources you currently have and what are the stats that each character currently has and which character do you currently have. You can make some notes here, and then you just keep this and then put it all back in the box, and when you want to play again, you pull it out, boom, look at my save sheet, okay, now I know what to pull out, where do I put it, and how to play the game. All right. So we got our miniatures. Obviously, you've seen these are beautiful little miniatures. I will say they're done pretty well. I would like to at least base paint each one of these just so you can kind of see the details come out. But I really like the sculpting in each one of them. It's done really well. There's a lot of emotion in each one of these little sculpts that I really like. Everyone looks completely different with their own type of weapon or clothing. However they had that set up, it works very well for the character that they've created for each one of those. Now what we'll do is let's look at some of these cards that are on the board, because this is something else that when you pull this out and you first look at the board, and I will mention this board is double-sided. On the other side is the same thing that you have here, but it's a little bit different. It's called the advanced side of the board. So after you've played this and you've got like really good at it, you can experience everything again by flipping it over. And again, there is a ton of content here. All right, so it's going to take you a long time to play through this game, even on this side. Because you may want to play through a campaign or play through it again and experience it in a different way, because again, it's choose your own adventure. You're going to be making decisions as you play through this game that are going to vastly change the environment and how you interact with it. So you may want to play through and choose what you didn't choose the first time, but if you want to make everything just harder, you can flip this over and go to the advanced side, and there are some things that change how cards are on this and how the game works. It makes it a little more difficult, but the option is there if you want it. So when you look at this board, it's going to be basically a kind of a dark tone sort of picture. You're looking down on sort of the insides of a building here, and you got some outdoor area here. You got kind of a stock room down here. You've got sort of an outdoor looking environment with a tree kind of right here. Then you got a little track here to track damage when people try to get into your your fort. You got to sort of fend it off and defend it. Then what you're going to want to do, and it's clearly marked on the board. So, for example, here are events, and there's a little spot here, and it says events. So, the event cards are going to go there, and it's going to show you exactly how to put that deck together right in the setup of the rules. For every one of these decks, it's going to clearly explain exactly how to build it and where it goes in its spot. But it's really easy. You just look for the word on the board, like, oh, I got the exploration deck in my hand. It's ready to go. Oh, exploration must go right here. Right? So it's that simple. So you got events that are going to happen throughout the course of the game. You have objectives that you're going to be able to try to accomplish over the course of that gameplay. And there are two main objectives and then a finals objective. And I'm not going to read these to you because I don't want to give anything away. But there are a couple, smaller objectives you need to accomplish. And I wouldn't say they're necessarily easy. So you may read it and say, oh, all I got to do is, do this one little thing. It may not be simple to do that one little thing. You really have to pay attention as a group to these objectives. Because if you lose focus on these objectives, you're going to keep draining. And then all of a sudden you're going to be like, oh, no, we're not accomplishing our objectives. So that's what you're really going to want to pay attention to. There are a deck for visitors. So visitors are going to come and visit you. And there's all kinds of different scenarios of how that plays out. All you do is when you encounter the visitor deck, that's how every card works. You flip it over, you read it. It's going to tell you what's going to happen. It may reference you to go into the scripts book. It may reference you to do something with a character. It may have you roll a die. But all of that will be listed out right on the card of how you're going to interact with that particular card. We've got the character deck. So as characters either die or leave the group, there's all kinds of things that can happen when you're out exploring. There's different scenarios that can happen with residents and visitors. So you will find that characters all of a sudden, they just might leave for one reason or the other. They might get killed. They might get really sick and die. Like all kinds of things could happen to these characters. Then you're going to pull from the character deck and get yourself a new character. So that's fun as well. You're sort of going through this gameplay, learning new characters, and then really when you feel like you've really got to know a character, it's like, Boris, man, he's my boy. And then all of a sudden something happens to Boris, and you're like, no, Boris! So, those are just some of the things you're going to experience as you go through the game. There's a really cool mechanic here that's called fittings. And these fittings, it was not clear to me when I first opened the game. I'm like, fittings? What is a fitting, right? But what's going to happen, essentially, is you're going to be able to look through this fittings deck whenever you want. So you can kind of stop the game and say, hey, guys, let's look through the fittings deck. We got to see what we have available here to us because we need something that we don't have. So let me give you an example. When you look at these fittings, build a rainwater collector. Ooh, so now maybe I can build some kind of rainwater collector that I can have at all times in my kind of house, my fort, my home here, and I don't have to always go out and forage for all this water and bring it back. Things like build a radio. Might need that for some reason. Maybe not. Build a moonshine still. That's fun. I'm definitely going to do that. Build a metal workshop. Maybe we can get some ammo from that. I don't know. I haven't built one yet. Build an herbal garden. Build a deadfall trap. So build a stove. I'm not going to read them all, but there's all these different things that you can build. So you can think of the fittings deck as something that you want to kind of upgrade to. And we'll talk about how that works once we get to the center part here. And then there's another deck called ideas. So maybe what's in these fittings isn't just quite enough. Like, yeah, it'd be great to have a water collector, but I got an idea. How about we turn that into a real water still, right? Or whatever, right? The ideas deck is what's going to allow you to do that. And you're going to be able to take those ideas and kind of filter them into your fittings deck over the course of gameplay. So you have the option to even upgrade the fittings that you've built. And again, that's another beautiful mechanic to this game. Per the situation that you're in, you can decide as a group what you want to build and why you want to build it. And over the whole campaign of gameplay, you can decide when you want to build those things. So sleeping, here's another example. Sleeping is an action you're going to take in a certain phase of this game. At night, you're going to be able to go to sleep. You're going to choose to be able to go to sleep. Well, do you sleep on the floor or do you sleep in a bed? Well, if you sleep on the floor, it's not as beneficial as sleeping in a nice cozy bed. Well, there are no beds to start with. unless they might be under, one of these furniture cards or hidden here somewhere. There are no beds. Well, we might want to build a bed. Well, guess what? A bed is one of these fittings. So that may be something that you want to do as a group at some point. Do you do it early on in gameplay? Do you do it late in gameplay? Completely up to you. Again, I love this because they have given everything that you experience to the players. Literally, like everything that you experience, every rule that you experience, how you experience it, how you implement it, the decisions you make, it's all been given to the player. Fantastic design. That's what that's called. Next thing we see here is fate. Now, at the end of a day, you're going to draw these fate cards, and that's going to do something. That's going to actually, affect a lot of different things. You're going to be looking at your characters, and your characters have a little area here, A, B, and C. They have certain habits. They have certain things that happen to them based on, statuses that they have. Those will execute when you flip that fate card. There's lots of things. Locations may change, or they may not. Some of the locations may stay. You might get to go back to the same location you've already went to if it's still on the board, or all of a sudden a location may disappear, be removed from the game, and then you have to pull out another location. So there's always this evolution of where you can go and what types of things you can experience, because on these location cards, and we're going to jump right here now, on these location cards, there's all kinds of different things that you will experience when you go out and you go to one of these locations, which is part of the scavenging phase. Like this one's the hotel. And there's various things that you'll see all over this card. There's all kinds of little things that you'll find, symbols and words and things that you can encounter. And don't worry, again, don't get overwhelmed. Just take them as they appear from the cards that you interact with. And it will tell you that special findings, certain things can only be found at certain locations. So if you know that you're looking for a certain component, like you're trying to build some kind of fitting, like right now I'm trying to build a rainwater collector. Well, I need a mechanical part. I need a filter, I need some components, I need some wood. Well, I got everything I need except for the mechanical part. So I'm trying to go to a location that offers a mechanical part. None of them do now. The one I had out before did, and I wasn't able to find it when I was there. So that kind of sucked. So, but I was able to find my filter. So I got my filter, and I'm going to have to keep searching for that mechanical part. So then I can build my rainwater collector, and I don't have to worry as much as collecting my water here to give everybody a drink every day. All right? So that's how those location cards will work. I know I jumped here, but it sort of came off of that fate conversation. So now we're going to move back over to this side of the board, and we're going to look at the narrative cards. So the narrative cards are going to be drawn at near the end of the day as well. And those are going to kind of give you some... well, there's all kinds of things they do, but they're going to give you bonuses. They're going to change kind of what's happening in the environment. Here's an example of one. You're going to draw two, and you're going to choose one of them as a group and shuffle the other one back in. I chose this one. It was called Handyman. It says, play at any time, automatically exchange a broken item for its fully functional equivalent without using any resources or tokens. So there are things that you can have to, use and resources to be able to find. Like, let's say you found a broken pistol. Well, may not be great if I could use it. Well, to be able to repair it, I might have to find a certain part, like a mechanical part or a weapon part, right, to be able to fix it. Well, this card will allow me to, at any point in time, just cash that in, and when you do, you remove it from the game. Now I can say, okay, my pistol is now good to go, so I can go up here and I can grab the token that says pistol, and it's fully ready and operational. Now, with any type of weapon, you can't just fire that pistol without ammo. And I was able to find some ammo on my last scavenger run, so I have some of that here in my storage. Not a lot. I have 3 ammo. But you will have to find ammo for your weapons as well. So it isn't just as easy as, oh, I got an assault rifle, I should be able to just fire that off, No, you're going to have to find ammo to go with that assault rifle to be able to use it. And when you run out of ammo, you're not going to be able to use that assault rifle anymore. You're now going to have to drop that assault rifle and maybe use a knife or use your fists. And there are dies that go for all of those when you get into combat. And that takes us here to our dice. There are, a few dice. These are 2 different sets of dice. This is not everything that you need for the game. The retail edition of the game does come with these 4 dice. There is one for kind of hand-to-hand combat, one for more of a melee type combat, and one for more of ranged, higher powered weaponry here, the red one. And this black die is a D10, and you will be rolling that quite a few times throughout the course of game. That does sort of make the call on a lot of different things that happen in the course of game. And then the cards will just tell you, roll the D10, and then if this happens, depending on what the number comes up, there's multiple options of what can happen. With the Kickstarter version, they did include this kind of limited custom version dice here. They are more of the square, more of a dull look. The retail is the rounded D6, a little bit of a shinier look. These visually, I think, are a little bit easier to just visually see. They're a little more basic die. I do prefer these because I feel like they go with the theme of the game a little bit better. They're a little more theme rich. And I kind of like the little symbols, how they have them on these dice. But outside of that, they are identical to the dice that are included from a retail edition. The same symbols, everything is the same. It just gives you a different option there. You can use whatever you want. So that's how the dice work. There's this deck called the Colors deck, and it will it's very basic. You might look at it initially and put it in the box. You're like, what is this? I mean, they basically just have colors, and the colors are circled on the other side. That will become more apparent to you when you play the game and you go through your exploration phase, which we'll talk about. You're going to be drawing those color cards, and based on what color you draw, that's going to activate a color on some other card that's in play, and it will say, hey, look at this particular card in play. Find that color circle, okay. And then that color circle will have a number in it. That's the script that you read from the scripts book. So again, there's so many different things that could happen when you're playing. There's just no way to forecast, these are probably the scripts that I'm going to be reading, or even if you've played this game 5 or 6, 7, 10 times, there's really no way to forecast that within every situation that you get into, because depending on the card that's randomly drawn from which deck, that's all going to sort of layer together to produce this outcome of which script that you read. So it isn't just simply draw a card and that's the random script. The script that you read is based on multiple variables sometimes. So that's great. Replayability off the charts. There is a little area here that says storage ×5. This is just a little spot to say if you start to grab too many of individual components, which I'm getting to that point here, you can gather up 5 of them and then just put one of them here, and then it denotes that you have 5. So for example, I have 2 components here. I actually have 10 of these sitting right here, and I have 5 pieces of wood sitting right here. I have another bulk set of components and wood sitting here. The reason why I have all this is because on my last scavenger hunt, I took 3 people that have a high level of inventory. So my inventory was like, I believe 12 when I went here. And I did have to take that down a couple levels due to some statuses that I had or something that was going on. But I was able to gather up just a ton of stuff because I didn't really find a lot. I only found like a filter and some coffee and some ammo. And then I just filled everything else up with water and components and wood. So you can take that. That's how you get a bulk amount of stuff that you need. You need to go on those scavenge hunts. And it can be dangerous. I took a risk by taking 3 of my players on the scavenge because only one person was left behind. And that was actually Bruno. Bruno stayed behind and held the fort down successfully against some hungry scavengers while everybody else was out scavenging through the night trying to find various things out there in the wild, right? So that's a fun aspect of the game. Last cards that I'll call out before we get to this middle section is the Exploration deck. This is the deck you're going to be going through when you actually go through exploring locations. You're going to draw so many of those. It does indicate right on the board how many you draw depending on which location you go to. So for instance, if I was to go to this middle location here, it's called the City Hospital. It's a distant location. Each one of these will indicate, the first one here is far away, this is distant, and this is a fairly close location. And that will make a difference once that also plays out depending on when you draw fate cards and you do various things as well. So let's say I decided to go to the City Hospital. I would draw 12 location cards. I go to my location deck here, draw 12 of those, and then I would set them right here. It's a little spot called Unknown. And this little area down here is all for locations. So as you're exploring cards and they might be things that are still active, you'll set them out here. And all you do is you just flip a card, you do exactly what it tells you, you start your journey, you start what's going on in that environment, and you make decisions, right? Like someone may come up to you and want to play with a soccer ball, and you may say, okay, sure, I'll stop off and we'll play around a soccer. Or, no, I was just almost killed a second ago, I'm really hungry, and I don't feel like kicking a soccer ball, so thanks, but no thanks, I'm going to press on. And then based on what each one of those decisions are, you're going to do a certain thing, read a certain script. When you're done with the card, boom, hit it in the discard pile. You're going to go through those cards, and there's various things that are going to happen. You're going to repopulate them in some instances. You're going to have to get rid of them in some instances. But when this deck is gone and it's all in the discard pile, that would be the end of your scavenging, your exploration. That would be the end of that. And then you would kind of move on to the next phase in the game. So that's how that would work. You will encounter residents. You'll see this deck right here. These people generally will be a problem for you. Sometimes you'll find people that you'll bring back with you if you do have space to bring, somebody back. Sometimes you'll be able to trade with them. That's another thing when you go out exploring. You may want to take, I'll take some vegetables and some sugar, and I don't really need this electrical part. I'll take that with me as well. Because you may find someone out there in the environment that needs those things specifically, and you can trade with and barter with them. Like, hey, I'll give you a little sugar, right? Give you a little sugar for maybe a little moonshine, right? I need a little moonshine. So that's how the Residence deck is going to work. There's a Findings deck, so as you explore, you're going to get the option to look through things, and that's an option as well. Like, hey, there's something here. Do you want to take a look at it? If you do, you might have to have this penalty or whatnot. And then you can look at that Findings deck and say, oh, there's a furniture piece here, and it tells you there's a few different types of things you can look through, and you just pick what you want, right? That's how you can find things. There's also special finds that you'll get by rolling the die on those locations. And then there's the Night Raids deck. So the Night Raids deck is going to come into play in a different phase. Like after you do your Scavenging Phase, you are going to do a Night Raid phase where who's ever left on guard is going to have to deal with people trying to get in and steal your stuff. So it's a constant battle that you have to be weighing on. Who do I trade with? Who do I borrow with? Who do I bring into the group? Are they a double agent? I don't know. Maybe it plays out that way at some point in one of the scripts. Don't hold me that. But, as you bring people into your group, do they end up, turning on you based on a status or whatever, right? I mean, you got to constantly balance all this that's going on. And it's like you're in the middle of this dramatic movie that's playing out, and you're kind of sort of driving the narration of what happens with all these characters within this environment. I can't say enough how much I absolutely love this game. Maybe you can't tell in the way that I'm reviewing this because this is a fairly raw review. I wanted the emotion to come through on a raw level with this one because I have had such a great time with this. I mean, it's hard to even call this a board game because, I mean, it is a board game, but it's also an RPG. It's also an experience. It's also like living a movie, living a game. I mean, it's based off a game, obviously, a video game, but that's what it feels like when you play this. So let's now talk about what this middle area of the board is about. And there's cards all over it. So when you build the board initially, when you start off, you're going to take, and it's going to have a deck of cards where you're going to take those cards and you're going to put them right on the spots that it indicates. So heap. Oh, there's heap. That's where it goes. That's where it goes. Now there's a couple different spots that say heap, so it does give you a little bit of variability. You don't really know because you're not looking at the card. You keep it secret, okay? You put it down on the board. There's heaps, furnitures, rubbles, closed doors, bars, that you'll have in this building, and there'll be more on the board, okay, to all be filled out. Again, I've started to play. So what's going to happen is you then, when it's your turn, you're going to start taking actions to move to these areas on the board. And you may want to move to an area that says heap because you can search it. There might be something cool there that you need. Or there's a furniture piece. Well, let's open the drawer. Maybe there's a gun in there. I don't know, whatever, that you can find. But in this situation, well, I can't just go directly to that furniture piece to search because there's bars locking the door. There's bars like, in the way locking myself away from this furniture piece. And it says cut through, requires a saw blade. Well, if I don't have a saw blade, I can't get through the bars. So I've got to find a saw blade at some point, either by trading, bartering, finding it, whatever. And then I can go to this location during the day phase. I can take an action to cut through those bars. And then I can get here and take an action and search the furniture. Again, movement is abstract. You kind of have to think in your mind. And that was another thing that was a little fuzzy for me right off the bat was, okay, when it's my turn and I got to move to take an action, is it like, okay, one action to move, right? And then one action to go somewhere and do something? Or is it like 1, 2, 3? Like, how does that work? It doesn't work that way. You can basically take an action to just go where you want to go and interact with that thing, but you have to follow some rules, right? So you, like, if this heap is here and I'm standing here, I can't just jump up on that heap. I do have to kind of go this way, go to the stairs, go up the stairs, and there used to be a locked door right here. Well, I had to use a lockpick. I don't have it anymore because I used it to unlock that door. And then once I did, now this space is open. Now I'm running into some rubble. So on a game turn, I'm either going to have to use a shovel, which I have one, sweet, or I can put 2 characters on this one spot, and it tells me that right on the card, to kind of move that rubble out of the way. Then I'd flip that card over, see what it says, and then I'd be able to take another action to move to the heap and now be able to search the heap and maybe find something really good. But you can see even within your own little house here, you're going to have to kind of explore, and that's what the day phase is all about. So we're going to go right into what each one of these phases would look like by use of our journal here. So we're in the day phase, and what this is called is day actions. The first thing that we're actually going to do here in the morning is we're going to fire off an event. So we would actually grab, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it here. And we're not going to do a full gameplay because I feel like I've really talked to the experience that you're going to get here. What we're going to do now is go through what type of thing would really play out and happen within each one of these phases. So I'm just going to go ahead and fire off this event here. And it does say add 2 to the cold space. So we're going to grab these 2 cold tokens and we're going to throw them up here in the cold space. So you're going to have to be fighting the bitter cold as well. And what that means is there's areas where you'll use these board up tokens to kind of board things up. You'll find different things to offset this cold, but it's cold, okay? So we're adding 2 cold to the space. Famine. Ooh, it doesn't sound good. Place this card on the findings pile, okay, right here. If any card is already there, remove that card from the game. So if there's already a events card there. If there's not, so we're good. The value of canned food, raw food, and vegetables is raised by 3. Okay, so now, since it's a famine, any vegetables, raw food, or canned food we have is now worth 3 more than it normally would. So vegetables are worth 5, it's now worth 8. Raw food is worth 10, it's now worth 13. I don't have any canned food. So good and bad. Good from the perspective of if I'm bartering and I have this and they don't, I might be able to get something better. Bad if I don't have any of this, I need to feed my people. Now it's going to be worth a lot more if I'm trying to barter and get that from someone. If I find it, gold. Okay, and then there's some various circles with numbers at the bottom with colors. Again, that's going to come into play when the game tells you it needs to. So place this card on the findings pile. So we're going to place it right there on the findings pile as it says to do so. All right, that's the event that's going to happen. All right, at this point, you would pass the book to the next player. Again, I'm the only person here, so I'm going to hang on to the book. And then our day actions. Each character, again, by standard, gets 3 actions. We look at our characters. Well, you know what? We do have 1 filled in here, 1 filled in. We got some people with some fatigue, so we might want to do a little bit of sleeping. We'll see what happens today. But we're only going to have 2 actions with these 3 characters, and Bruno is only going to get 1 the first action because he does have 2 wounds, and both of those little dots are filled in. All right, now, what do we want to do with our actions? Well, there's lots of different things we can do. We can take actions on shelter cards, fitting cards. We talked about fitting cards, how awesome those are. Actions on various shelter cards where you have to use tokens and then placing a new fitting. So if you do want to place a new fitting, what that means is you do have this stuff to be able to build a fitting. You can place that about anywhere you want. There are some rules here that indicate where you can place them. And if you have any question, the save sheet right here shows you actually the ones that are filled in dark on this sheet, you can't put a fitting in. Everywhere else you can. So that's a quick way to be able to look at that and say, oh, here's a layout of the main board. I know where I can put a fitting in where I can't. And the fitting will stay there. So that area becomes like, oh, that's where the water filter is, or the rain collector. Hey, that's where the whiskey distillery is. Hey, that's where the upgraded master bed is, right? Whatever. That's where they go. So you can only build out so many fittings because there's only so many spots on the board to put them. So it's another thing that's pretty cool as well. And that's what day action is going to be about. You're going to choose what you're going to want to do within your play area here and do that. So again, I may choose, probably to take, maybe Bruno. He's only got one action here, so I'm going to go ahead and throw him right up on the rubble here, because I can clearly get to that. It's open up, and I'm going to go ahead and take one of my other characters and throw him on the rubble, because I need two characters to do that. I don't want to use my shovel, per se. I'm then going to take a character, and I might work on a fitting with that character, because I may have enough components to do that. I don't, because I'm still missing my mechanical part, so I can't do that yet. So I can't cut through bars. I can't pick a lock because I don't have a lock pick. So, you know what? I may go clear out some rubble. So I'm going to go ahead and just take these two guys and move them over here to clear out some rubble. And then all those actions would execute. So for the first round of like actions, after we've kind of chose what everybody's going to do, it's all going to happen simultaneously. Okay? Then, after each action, you're going to pass the book. And it tells you that right here. So now in the next action, we're all going to choose, okay, what's going to be the second round action? Who can take place? Well, looks like all three top characters here can take place in the second action. Bruno here, he's out. All right? He can't do any more day actions. So now we're going to decide second action. What's everybody want to do? Well, probably now that we got the rubble out of the way, it's going to be one person moving on to the heap here, one person moving on to the furniture and searching there, and one person, doing something else. I don't know. What we'd have to decide as a group what we want to do. And that's what the day action's all about. It's all about what's going on back at home base, right? Again, another mechanic that I love about this game. You can almost sort of separate, when you get into your scavenging phase, it's like you're deep into the scavenging phase, you're running into other people, what's going on, what's happening. But then when you get to the day phase, the next day, you kind of can put that behind you and step away from that scavenging phase and say, all right, let's put all of what's going to happen in these other phases behind us. And we don't really have to think about that right now. Let's focus on, we're home, we're safe. Let's have some fun. Let's explore some areas of this building. Let's try to build up and improve the different things that we have, because that's going to help us in the long run as a society. You can kind of put everything else aside and dive into that. So that's what the day phase is going to be all about. It's that experience of the game. All right, now we're going to go into the dusk phase after our day phase. And what's going to happen here is we're going to have to essentially feed and give water to everybody that's there. So each character must drink one water. Okay, I got enough, so I'm good for this next round. You will discard it, and then you will roll a die. And depending on what happens on that die, you will either raise your hunger or raise your misery for every single person. You then are going to do hunger, so each person should eat at least one food. Now, some food doesn't actually change their hunger. Like if they just eat some vegetables, they're still hungry, but they got their one food. If they don't get any food, you have to raise their hunger. So depending on what types of food they eat, canned or raw, you'll either keep it the same, you'll lower it by 1 or by 2, so that's always good. So you want to keep food on hand. That's the whole phase there. All right, you're going to pass the book. Now you're getting into the evening. You're going to assign each character one of 4 tasks, okay? So each character is going to get a task, and here they are. You're either going to sleep in a bed, if you have one, and if you do, you just lower your fatigue to 0. All right, so everybody right now is fatigued, but it's only at 1, so it's not too bad. We don't have any beds. That's okay. We're going to have to get some at some point. I'm hoping that there is a bed somewhere and I don't have to just build one. I don't know. We'll figure that out. Sleep on the floor. There's a spot right here to sleep on the floor. This lowers each character's fatigue by 2 that decides to do that. So sleeping on the floor isn't a bad option. So, I might hold off on that bed for a little while. Guard duty is all about the night raids. It's all about protecting your base here. And when you get to that night raid, who's ever on guard duty is going to be the one that's going to be laying the fight down. All right? There has to be at least one of your characters on guard. Otherwise, there is a specific script that you read. Something will happen. When that happens, you will raise your character's fatigue by 1 because obviously they're staying up all night, right? They're trying to stay on guard, see what goes on. Scavenging. You're going to assign who's going out on the raid. Who's going out to find new stuff, bring stuff back to the group, maybe new members, maybe new supplies, who knows. Their fatigue is going to raise by 1 as well because, again, they're going out on a night mission. Next player, going to pass the book. Now we're getting into another phase of the game, which is called Scavenging. This is one of the funnest and most deep phases of this game, where again you're going to get into this exploration deck and you're going to be exploring, and as you explore, that scenario is going to play out in different ways. All kinds of different things you're going to encounter based on which location you go to. You go down to a basement. There's a locked door. Do you have a lockpick? No. This is what you do. Are you able to open the door? Yes. You get through. Oh, hang on. You find something really cool. You pick it up. Hang on. What's that noise? There's something in the shadows. What is that? Roll a die. Nothing. Or roll a die. There's a visitor. Is the visitor armed? I mean, you can see, like, this scenario just plays out and you get so involved in, like, what's going on. And it feels like this accomplishment when you're done with this scavenging phase. It's like, oh my god, like that was amazing, like we made it, we met these characters, like, oh, could you believe? It's almost like you can tell stories about, that's the RPG aspect, about what happened during that phase. Then you're out. Okay, there's this noise track. We didn't talk about that. There's this track here that's going to go up and down as you play, and it's the noise that you're making, and based on the noise you're making, that's going to dictate if you run into certain type of you run into residents. And, again, those aren't always good. You may run into a hostile resident. Ran into a pretty nasty situation at one point where, we were on the verge of death, the entire group, and we got lucky, and nobody got capped. But, it's something that you can run into based on the noise that's going on throughout the course of the game. So just generally, noise does affect you. The more noise you make, it's probably going to be a bad thing for you. So you want to manage that noise track as you go through your exploring here. Okay? And then we already talked about the findings. We already talked about how we kind of went through the exploration phase. When that's done, again, when your deck runs out and it's all discarded, there are your location cards, you're going to pass the book to the next player. We're going to get now to Night Raid. So whoever was left on guard, let's say we did decide to leave these two characters here on guard, they would be ready to fend off against our Night Raid individuals that came through. So you would choose weapons if you did have them. I have ammo. I don't have a weapon right now. So if I was to do this right now, I wouldn't be able to give them any weapon. They're basically using their dukes on this one, which is just going to be this gray die, which has fists on it. Simply what's going to happen is draw and resolve the top card of the Night Raid deck. So you're going to draw this Night Raid deck, and you're going to see what happens. And I'm not going to read that to you because sometimes you're just going to have people that are come to you like weak, hungry, not going to be a big deal. Sometimes you're going to have armed people come at you in groups, and you're going to be like, oh no. And there's these tokens here that you'll be able to use to put on this little board here, this little area here, looks like a tic-tac-toe, that you can set people. They have A, B, and C level, different prowess. Prowess comes into how many times they can roll dice when you actually attack. Characters have that as well, so characters with high prowess are going to want to be on the guard duty because that gives you re-rolls if you roll like a really bad roll. And then depending on what the roll is, it's going to tell you right here in the book exactly what that means. And it's very simple. You're going to compare. It's like a point system. Compare points. You'll take wounds and you'll take damage. Wounds will go against your character. Damage will go against your supply. So that's how they kind of balance that, where you can take enough wounds where your character just dies right then. Or you can take wounds and you're not dead. You just have to take that status token and up those wounds. But that's how you're going to kind of, limit what you have in storage. Because you might think, well, I just scavenge all the time and just keep building this thing up and I'll have so much stuff it'll never be a problem. That will not be the case. You can get drained in a night rage. Rage. It is a rage. You can get drained in a night raid. You lose a lot of stuff depending on what comes at you. So you do want to build that up and keep a good stock, because you will lose that over the course of those night raids. All right, and then you're going to have a crime wave. This is still part of this game phase, and all that means is there are some cards at the beginning you're going to set aside. I have them right here. They're like some really, tough night raids and resident cards. You're going to take those and you're going to shuffle those into. You're just going to take one. It gives you an option. You're going to shuffle 2 cards into these decks. So you can either do 1 and 1, or 2 and 2 of these, or 2 of those. You can decide how you want to do that. But you'll shuffle those into those decks, and it'll make the deck a little more, maybe a little more tough, a little more rich, give you some more stuff to interact with. It's called the crime wave. That's going to happen until these cards are gone. Then after they are, you just wouldn't do anything. Everything's sort of in the deck. You then would pass to the next player. Now we're at the dawn phase. So during the dawn phase, we're going to do a few different things. The scavenging party returns. So everything that you find is going to be placed here. Your scavenging party is going to be up here. Let's say these people were on scavenging and they found, various things on their run. Let's say they found these things. Okay, now it's over. Everybody's coming home. Woohoo! Bringing the goods home, coming back. You take everything, throw it in your storage. Everybody comes home telling stories. Hey, what happened? Hey, you know what? Bruno died last night. Ooh, that sucks, man. Took a bullet to the leg. Couldn't take it, right? Who knows? He got bit by a dog. I don't know. Something happened in Night Raid. Bruno's down, right? What happened with you guys? Well, we ran into this other guy, brought him back. Good thing we did. Now Bruno's dead. He can kind of fill in, or we found a bunch of stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are going to happen when the scavenger party returns. Now, obviously, everybody around the table is going to know that. Just kind of playing this out, that what's kind of going on in your head, right? What you're experiencing. Assign meds and bandages. You're going to take any meds and bandages you have. You're going to assign them to characters. They don't just auto-activate. You're going to assign them, all right? You're then going to draw a fate card, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. The fate card is now going to dictate what happens in the game. It's going to dictate if your meds and your bandages were successful and did what they needed to do. It's going to dictate if certain people's habits play out. It's going to dictate if certain things happen to characters based on some information at the bottom of their cards here. It's going to dictate if a location gets switched out and changes. So the fate card is what's going to sort of shuffle up the environment on you day to day. You're then going to give the book to the next player. Narrative card action. That comes in what we talked about here, this little handyman card that I picked up. You're going to be able to draw 2 of these narrative cards, and they do all kinds of different things. Very simple. Does exactly what it says on the card. Just do what it says on the card. You're allowed to pick one of the 2 that you draw. You then pass it to the next player. Now, at this point, the only thing that's left in this book is a little example on what can happen with trade, backstabbing, weapons, combat scripts, and combat sheet. And I say all that and you think, oh, a bunch of more rules. No, right here. It's all you got, right? These 2 little pages tell you exactly how to interact with any of those types of things. It's just some finer rules of what's going to happen when you get into mainly combat and trading when you're out bartering with visitors that might show up, or maybe out when you're exploring your location. And that's the whole book. That's all we got here. Then at the end here it says save. So that's when you pull out your handy dandy save sheet, and if you wanted to stop after that full day and save, you can. So let's say it took you an hour or 45 minutes to play through one day, all the phases that we just went through here. And when I say day, I'm talking full, not just day actions, full 24 hours, right? The full phase of one 24-hour day. Let's say you wanted to stop there and something else, or that was just the end of your gaming session. Maybe you're just introducing this to new gamers, and this was kind of a gateway. I think this will be an excellent gateway game for people, because it's an experience that people can sink their teeth into and really go through, and you don't have to know everything to do when it's your turn, because it's a cooperative game. One person that really knows how to play, or half the group that really knows how to play, can help everybody sort of go through, and you're all making decisions together, but still each person gets that special feel of like, well, I got the journal now, so I can kind of make the final call. All right, so that's pretty fun. So at this point, you can save if you want, or power through and do more campaigning towards this game. So that's how this book is going to work. So it very much is a component that you're not going to just read and say, okay, I know what everything is, put it away and it doesn't come out. The journal book is a component of the game. It is a necessity to pass that around to all the players as you're playing, because that will indicate who has the final say and kind of control at a certain point in the game. It also is a handy reference to just ensure you don't forget what's going on as you play. So think about games that are like this, that don't have this type of component. You always forget phases. You always forget that you did something or you didn't. You always have to, oh, we forgot so-and-so. We have to go back and do something. Well, if that would have happened, then you're doing all this revamping of what you did and trying to backtrack, or you don't even do it. And then maybe that makes a difference down the road in gameplay. This little baby right here ensures, even if you know the game like the back of your hand, you're still having this in hand and looking at it and reading through step 1, step 2, step 3, and just going through what you would do. Absolutely phenomenal design, phenomenal component. Love it. That's this war of mine. I can't say it enough. I hope you watched this whole review, because if you didn't, please go back and watch it. I know it's a longer review, but it's worth it just to understand the excellent experience that you get with this game. I cannot recommend this title more. It is by far absolutely one of my favorite games at this point. It's hard. I can't say it's my favorite game, but it is definitely one of my favorite games in that top list. Just unbelievable. So much fun. You guys are not going to regret picking this up. If you get it out there at retail, don't pass it up. I can't recommend it more. For the designers of this game, you guys knocked it out of the park, okay? I cannot make that more clear. You absolutely knocked this game out of the park. And it's a very rare occurrence when you can take a movie or a video game and turn it and translate it into a board game and do so well with that translation that it gives you the feel of that prior experience, but then makes it so much better, and you really feel like you're in the middle of it. So absolutely rock star job, Awaken Realms. The designers on this board game, it couldn't have been any better. It really couldn't have. So pick this up if you see it. That's my final call on this one. So hit that like, click the subscribe below to join the team, ring the bell. This has been the McGuire Review, and we will see you next time.